Hello everyone. I want to share a metaphor with you today that I use a lot in my clinical practice as a therapist. And it's a metaphor that I use a lot with couples when it comes to conflict resolution and kind of figuring out communication, figuring out those types of strategies. And it can be used in a couple other areas too, and I'll list those at the end here. But I call it my roxes in boxes metaphor, and I know that the double plural on rocks isn't necessary, but I like it better when it rhymes. Anyway, imagine yourself in a room, in like a storage room, that has all of these storage shelves kind of around the walls. And on these shelves and on the floor also are these boxes, these cardboard boxes, and they're full of all of these rocks, like various sizes. Some of them have like dirt on them, some of them have moss. They're just like kind of not really pretty, they're just ugly rocks. So each box represents a conflict or a situation of tension in the relationship. And every time you enter into an argument or a fight, you find yourself back in this room with all of these boxes. And the new box, in front of you is the current situation that you're dealing with. And all of the rocks inside of that box are the different elements, the different emotions, the different perspectives, the different pieces and elements of that situation that are kind of ugly. Some of them are sharp and jagged. Some of them are really big and heavy, right? Just all the different elements of that situation that are troublesome and that kind of contribute to the situation and the conflict as it is. Now, what we need to do when we get into a situation like this is ideally focus on the box that is at hand. Because the reason that we have this, storage room full of all of these shelves of, open and unemptied boxes is because quite often a lot of us can get into the habit of not actually getting to the bottom of the box or the situation that we are currently in. And then that one gets left unfinished, right? Maybe it gets left on the floor. Maybe we shelve it with, still partially filled or whatever. And sometimes we get distracted by the other boxes in the room. How many of you can relate to this? You start a fight or a conflict, with a specific situation that is happening in the here and now. And before you know it, it connects to all of these previous experiences that have happened, that have not been sufficiently worked through, that are still emotionally charged, right? And so all of a sudden, what started out as one specific situation or circumstance is now somehow connected to all of these prior ones that have nothing to do with it. But maybe you just see it and you're reminded about it, and this is kind of what happens when we're in this room. Like we're there, we're focused on the one box with our partner or whoever. It could be a friend, it could be a family member, whoever it is that we kind of come into that room with. We have that one box, and then as we're talking, as we're unpacking, sometimes our eyes wander and we say, oh, look at this over here, look at this over here. And yeah, sometimes we start taking rocks from other boxes that have nothing to do with the one that brought us there in the moment, in the first place. And we start taking these out and we start chucking them at each other. And we get dirty and bloodied and bruised, and it's not a pleasant experience, right? So how can you approach this in a way that's maybe more productive, more healthy, more streamlined, more successful and hopeful? You can start by fostering the habit of just focusing on the box that brings you to the room in that moment. So whenever you find yourself back into the storage room of conflict, focus on the situation that brought you there. and try to empty that box so that at least that way you're not adding unfinished boxes to the pile, right? You're not adding to the shelves that are already kind of like crumpling under the weight, right? And you're not like cluttering the floor. If you can take all of those rocks out, and if you can get to the bottom of the box that you're currently on, then you can collapse that box, take it out with you when you leave, throw it in the recycling, right? And so that way you're not adding to the clutter of the room. So that's kind of the first step, right? And if you're able to establish this as a habit, then what you'll find is the room itself doesn't really change a whole lot, right? You still have all of the boxes there from previous fights, from previous conflicts. Those kind of stay as is. And yeah, maybe they get more dusty, as time goes on, that kind of happens. But you're not adding to it, right? The room isn't becoming more cluttered. So already, like, just keeping it at its current state and not adding to it, that's already a huge success. That's the first step. What you then do after is, once you've kind of got that, in place where you're at least not adding to it, you set aside time when you are not taken to the room by conflict. You actually go back voluntarily. You choose to set aside a bit of time and space, and you go there with the relevant individual, and you step into it voluntarily. And the beautiful thing here is that when you do it this way, you maintain a certain element of control. You get to, well, first of all, you're not emotionally charged, right? Because you're not brought to that room through current conflict. You're there in a much less triggered state. So already your head is clearer, right? And emotionally it's easier to manage. But stepping into that room is already going to kind of trigger you, maybe, right? Like, you're going to see the clutter. It's not a very nice space. It's still kind of messy. It's a big project cleaning that out, right? And the idea is not that you clean it all out in one sitting, right? I think most of us would find that overwhelming. You break it down. But you get to choose. You get to choose how, when, and if you go back there. I would suggest that you do, that you consider the if. But you can choose when and how you go back there. You can choose how long you stay there. And you get to choose also which opened, unfinished boxes you start with. Do you tackle like a big one, that will give you more of a sense of accomplishment and relief at the end of emptying it? Or do you start with a bunch of smaller ones because they're less triggering, less overwhelming? You get to choose. You have choice points at all of those areas. And so it's nice in that aspect that you get to kind of chart your own course and decide yourself how you want to tackle that. But you need to set aside time, and go back and do that bit by bit. And then as you do, with time and consistency, you declutter that room, right? And if you maintain the original habit of just not adding to the room in the first place, then what is cleared and uncluttered stays uncluttered through that experience and through that habit, right? So I know that I'm talking metaphorically here, but I hope that you can kind of see the connection in terms of conflict, right? And what that might mean in terms of fights and arguments and conflict resolution. The same metaphor can also be powerful with regards to things like grief or trauma, right? You can also see these as boxes that have, a bunch of rocks in them that need to be unpacked, right? And there can be additional situations that trigger or highlight some of those feelings of grief, trauma, or similar things. And so you start first not by adding, but by taking away, and then follow the same pattern. So I hope you find this helpful, And yeah, any questions or reflections, I'd love to hear them in the comments.